Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. So today we're going to continue on with the new player series, and I'm going to be very honest with you guys. Today's video might not be the most interesting of this series, but I think there's some good information, so hopefully you guys stick it through and you get a little something out of this. For this video, we're going to be talking about dailies, daily login rewards, and a little bit of UI or settings that you can change to improve or at least change up the gameplay a little bit, depending on what you care about most while playing this game. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and talk about daily login rewards. And a few of you out there probably have already been doing this and you might even understand it, but for those out there who are new to the game, I want to cover this just to make sure people know exactly how this works. Now, first and foremost, you will need to have paid for an expansion or bought Guild Wars 2, the original game, before it was free to play in order to have access to these daily login rewards. Acquiring these rewards is as simple as it sounds. You just need to log in, and in the bottom right hand corner of the screen you should see a jiggling chest. If you've ever completed an event, then you've probably gotten some sort of jiggling chest in the corner of the screen before, but this one obviously looks a little different, and the rewards are much different than most of what you'll get from completing an event. But before we get into the rewards themselves, I want to talk about the cycle of the daily login, or at least the time frame that this adheres to. Basically, you're looking at a 28-day cycle, so each day that you log on will be one day towards the 28th day, and once you hit the 28th day, the rewards will cycle back around to the first day. Now, these don't have to be consecutive logins, so if you miss a day, it doesn't reset to 1 or anything like that, but you will need to log in multiple times to claim all of these rewards. Now, while you won't be penalized necessarily for not logging in a certain day, it does sort of put you behind on that 28-day schedule because players who logged in every day technically got rewards that you could have got but didn't. Now, I know for a lot of players this isn't going to be the end of the world, but I did want to let you guys know exactly how this portion worked. And I know I've said this a lot in previous videos, but as far as that daily login reward is concerned, I personally think it's best to log in even if you aren't going to play Guild Wars 2 for that day. Just log in, grab the chest, and log off. So now that you know how the login rewards actually work in terms of how to get the most out of those rewards, we can talk about the rewards themselves. So right-clicking on your daily login chest is going to immediately take whatever the reward you were going to get and put it into your inventory. This actually works on all chests now, but if you should happen to left-click it, you'll actually see this UI pops up and gives you a breakdown of that 28-day cycle I was talking about. Based on this chart, you will be getting the top left reward first, and then you'll start to move right on that first row until you eventually make it down to the next row. That being said, you'll notice that for the most part anyway, each column is going to have a kind of specific reward tied to it. For instance, in the first column, all of the bags look the same, and this is actually one of those resources you can only get through daily logins. These are mystic coins. The mystic coins are usually used in crafting items that have a particular skin, usually a pretty flashy one at that, but can also be sold on the trade post if you want to make yourself a little bit of gold. The column to the right of the mystic coins looks very similar, just a different bag this time. This is also going to be a daily login specific reward, and these are called laurels. In the larger cities like Lion's Arch, as well as the racial starting cities, you will always find, at least somewhere, a laurel vendor. Now, laurel vendors are going to sell all kinds of stuff, and it would be kind of insane for me to go through all of it here, but I will make mention of some things that I think are worth it. And from a beginner's standpoint, I honestly think you should save these up until you have enough to get some ascended trinkets. Now, obviously, if you're brand new to the game, you are far off of level 80 ascended gear, but keep in mind you're only going to be getting these every few times that you log in, and it's sort of a slow progression. That in mind, I would honestly save these if you're a new player, because when you do manage to hit level 80, you'll have a pretty good shot at a full set of at least Berserker's Ascended trinkets. Now, if you look through the Laurel vendor, you're going to see all kinds of things that you can get. There's gear, crafting materials, gathering tools, unidentified dyes. The list goes on and on. But if you're a new player, I highly recommend just saving these up until you have at least one level 80 character, and you'll get the most out of this. Back on to other daily login rewards. In the third column, you'll see a bunch of items that look the same, and these are actually just bags of luck. Now, consuming luck will increase an account-wide value called Magic Find, and the higher your Magic Find, the better chance you have at finding some better loot. In the fourth column over, you'll see a bunch of things that look the same here, and these are actually chests of Black Lion goods. Double-clicking one of these is going to give you a random chance at a few of the items that are on the gem store. Don't expect to get any skins, but you will get a few convenience items. In the fifth column, you'll notice that it's actually a little bit different, as not all of these appear the same. The top two are actually just crafting materials that you can get for free. Down from that, it's a celebration booster. This is just a normal booster like any other experience or Magic Find booster, only it's kind of both of those at the same time. So if you're leveling up or you just want a better shot at some loot, this is definitely something worth logging in for. And finally, the last one in the fifth column is going to be a few transmutation charges. These charges actually allow you to swap the appearance of another piece of armor or some weapons with the stats of what you currently have equipped. I actually made a video not too long ago as an introduction to what is called Fashion Wars 2, or the reskinning of your characters in this game, and I cover this in much greater detail, so if you want a little bit more information, go ahead and check that one out. In the sixth column, you'll see that it's a bunch of bags of experience, and these actually just have tomes of knowledge inside them. Tomes of knowledge, if you don't know, are an item that when double clicked will just level up your character once. So definitely something to go for, again, if you're leveling up, or something to save if you'd like to level up another character in the future as fast as possible. In the seventh and final column, you'll notice that it is a little bit different again. At the top, you'll see that we get a larger bag of laurels. Down from that, you will get a chest of exotic equipment. When you loot one of these and double click on it, it should give you the option to pick the profession that you'd like the gear for. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to choose the stats, so you kind of just have to roll on those. Down from that, we get another larger bag of laurels. And finally, for the 28th reward, you get a chest of loyalty. Now, the chest of loyalty works a little bit differently in that when you double click it, you get your choice between ascended crafting materials, legendary crafting materials, a whole lot of laurels, or a whole lot of tomes of knowledge. Personally, I really like this as a final reward because depending on what you're currently working on, you might not need some static reward as much as you need, say, some tomes of knowledge to level up a character. If you're level 80 and you want to start getting some ascended trinkets, well, you have a whole lot more laurels. If you want to upgrade your armor or you're going for a legendary, they got you covered. So now that you know what you can get just from logging into the game, let's talk about actual dailies. Now, if this isn't your first MMO, you're probably familiar with the concept, but if not, dailies are just tasks that you can do once per day for additional rewards. In Guild Wars 2, this means you have a long list of tasks to complete, and once you complete any 3 of those tasks, you'll be awarded with the daily chest. More interesting than that is that this daily system actually spans across all 3 game types, so PvE, PvP, and World vs. World. Not only that, but they work in conjunction with one another, meaning that if you, say, don't want to do any more PvE-oriented rewards, you could pop into PvP, like I typically do, and just play like one quick game, and that'll get you 1 of the PvP rewards and 2 of the PvE rewards, resulting in 3 daily rewards completed, and you'll still get the chest. But this also means that if you prefer competitive modes over the typical PvE in Guild Wars 2, you can still get that daily reward. The tasks that you can complete in order to get this reward are going to rotate, so they will not be the same every day, but in PvE, you can expect to do a lot of what you've been doing already during map completion, get yourself some vistas, complete events, that sort of thing. In PvP, You don't even necessarily have to win all the time to get some of those rewards, you just have to play a game. And in World vs. World, it can be as simple as ranking up, or it might require you to defend or capture points. But as you can see, this really isn't too hard to complete, and the reward is actually pretty worthwhile. For starters, you're gonna get a flat 2 gold a day just for completing these very simple tasks. If you're trying to make money, especially early on, this is a fantastic way to do that. In addition to the 2 gold, you will get a bag that has 3 spirit shards in it, and those spirit shards will be used to craft all sorts of things out of the Mystic Forge, swap the stats of ascended weapons and armor later on. Essentially, it's not super important that you have a bunch of these at the beginning, but it'll pay off to have a few of these saved up once you hit level 80. And lastly for this video, we get to cover by far one of the most exciting topics, settings and UI. Now I know I might lose a few of you guys here, but stick with me as there are a few things that I think you can take away from this. For instance, did you know that you could not only resize your map, but you could move it from the top to the bottom of the screen if you wanted to? If you hover over your minimap, you should see a little bit more UI than typically shows up. And on the right-hand side, there's actually a place that if you place your mouse, the cursor will change to a little hand. And if you click and pull up, or pulled down, depending on where your map currently is, you can change the position. If you hover over to the outside corner, you'll be able to resize the map. Unfortunately though, this is the majority of what you can actually do with the UI, especially when you consider how much customization was in Guild Wars 1. But now we're actually just gonna move on to the actual settings. So in order to reach our settings, you're gonna hit escape and go to options, and we'll just start on the first tab. Now I'm not gonna be covering all of this in insane detail, but I will point out things that I think you guys might be able to benefit from. For starters, you can turn off your profanity filter if you're a dirty-mouthed heathen, but just down from that, you should see a bunch of checkboxes, and that's most of what I'd like to talk about. I would recommend checking the first 3 boxes. This is just going to improve your ability to loot and loot quickly. The next 4 options all involve showing enemy, NPC, player, and usable object names. I tend to check all 4 of these boxes because the default option is to hold down Control and Alt whenever you'd like to see this information. This means that if you're completing something like a heart and you want to very quickly and easily know where the things that you can interact with are, you have to hold down Control and Alt by default to better see those. If you guys have been watching my videos for any period of time, you've probably already noticed that every NPC has a name above it always, every player is the same way, and while I sometimes hate how much this can clutter up my game, I really prefer to see these things right away. That way, if I want to know if other players are on the map with me, it's pretty obvious. If I want to, say, complete a heart or event that has an interactable object, I know where that is almost immediately. And it does sort of take away from the gameplay a little bit, but it's just a personal preference for me. Down from that, we have always show my name, and that sort of plays into that as well. Personally, I don't need to see my own character name over my head all the time, so I leave this unchecked. Down again, we have disable closing windows with escape. I leave this unchecked as well because I typically close my windows by pressing escape. The next option is show skill recharge, and I would highly recommend checking this box, especially if you're new to the combat in this game. What this means is that after you activate an ability, you'll be able to see a timer until that ability comes back up. Down again, we have show target health percent. Typically, when you're playing this game, you're going to see a red health bar, but you don't really know exactly how much health is remaining. Checking this box will give you a percentile, so you have a much clearer picture of how much damage you need to do to take out whatever it is you're fighting. This isn't going to matter on smaller enemies, but for bosses, this can really help. And that's actually going to be it for this section, but if you head down to camera and look right before it switches over to combat, you should see adjust camera to character height and enable first person camera. Enabling the first-person camera will allow you to scroll all the way in and helps immensely when taking screenshots. As a quick side note, if you hit Control, Shift, and H at the same time, it'll actually make all your UI go away so you can take those perfect screenshots you've always wanted to. If you should check Adjust Camera to Character Height, well, that does what it sounds like. Especially if you're playing a character like an Asura, it'll reorient the camera's position to make more sense for the character's height that you're playing. Again, if you're playing Asura, definitely check this. Now, if we actually go down to the combat movement section, there are quite a few options here, but I'm just going to cover a few of the most important, at least in terms of being a new player. I personally disable double tap to evade and set that to a key, but that's just my personal preference. The fourth option, right click to attack or interact, I actually have enabled because sometimes I just prefer to interact with NPCs this way. Again, more of a personal preference, but I know some of you guys out there might want this as an option. A few down from that, I've actually disabled auto-targeting, and that's because a few of the abilities in this game will actually move your character forward, oftentimes faster than you're going to move just by running forward. I like using abilities to kind of fling my character forward when I'm not mounted up. And if you leave this checked, if you should get too close to an enemy, you will accidentally damage that enemy, putting you into combat and slowing your movement speed, defeating the whole purpose. The last four options here are going to be up to you, but currently I have melee attack assist on, and this just means if you're in melee range or using a melee weapon, you won't necessarily go through your target and keep you within melee range so that you can continue to do good damage. Next, I have lock ground target at maximum skill range checked, and that's because I have a few characters that do have ranged abilities, and I prefer the reticle to not extend beyond the maximum range for that ability, so it's pretty clear I know where that ability can reach. Down from that, I don't actually have this checked right now, but depending on how I'm playing the game or what class I'm playing, I might enable this, and this will actually just snap the reticle to your current targeted enemy, and again, it's going to come down to whether or not this is a convenience or annoyance, depending on what profession you play and how you play the game. Lastly, we have allow skill retargeting, which I have checked, and this just means that if you're using an ability and the enemy you're fighting should die, if you retarget, that ability will still go off, but on the new target. Lastly, for this section, if you scroll down to groups, there's a checkbox for simple party UI. If you haven't been in a party yet, you may not have seen this, but when you're in a party, the party UI is kind of large. It typically shows a profile picture for the character. If you don't really care about all that and you just want the basic information and your screen to be more open, go ahead and check that box and it'll sort of minimize all of the people in your party to make it a little bit easier to see. On the left hand side, if we click what looks like a vista or two triangles with a circle up there, you'll get graphics options. We're not going to go over all the graphics options right now, but I did want to point out the interface size. Again, if you'd like a more minimalistic look, you can feel free to take this all the way down to small, which is what I'm currently using. But if you should be over at a friend's house or using a different display to play Guild Wars 2, you may need the large or larger settings to see clearly on a larger screen, something I've dealt with when trying to play over at other people's houses. And that, guys, is finally it for the most exciting of all the guides I've ever made. But as I said before, I do think that this information is important, or at the very least that it could be very helpful for new players, which is what this whole series is about, right? If I did forget anything that you guys out there also think might be important, please include that down in the comments. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.